out there, everybody. How are you guys today? I wanted to come and talk to you about, oh, look, turn my light on. Is that better? There we go. All right. I wanted to come and talk to you today about adoption parenting when your child lacks empathy. Can you guys relate to this? I remember one time I was crying. I was so frustrated. The same offense was happening over and over and over. And this was with the child that I had since birth. I adopted the child very young. And I couldn't understand why my child literally looked more sad to be in trouble than she cared about me and my tears. Can you relate to that at all, Mama? My name is Brooke, for those of you that don't know me. I'm an adoptive mom to 11 beautiful children, and I help other adoptive moms to calm the chaos in their hearts and in their homes. And if that's something that you need, please reach out to me for a complimentary 45-minute strategy call so we can kind of dive in and see what's going on in your house. But for right now, I want to talk about empathy. So it's an interesting thing. When you think of a person that has no empathy, immediately the mental health community goes directly to diagnoses that are not good, right? Like you think of people who are sociopaths or narcissists, that they lack empathy and they don't have the willingness or ability to connect with the other people in their world, and it's dangerous. Is that not what you think when you think of a person without empathy? Well, here's the deal. First of all, that is a misnomer. Empathy is on a continuum, right? So it's not you have it or you don't, but there is a continuum of the amount of empathy in which a person has. Now, for our adopted children, I would say there are 3 reasons that you don't see empathy, okay? Not seeing it is different than it not being there, okay? And this could be for children from birth. This could be children who've had trauma experiences post-birth and didn't come to you until later, okay? So love and approval are powerful emotions that drive you and I's behaviors, typically as we grow up, right? We don't want to disappoint mom and dad. We don't want to be in trouble. And that is the thing that drives us. And I don't know about you, but when I was little, if my mom was so upset that she was crying, and it didn't matter if she was upset at dad, if she was upset because she got hurt. I remember one time she stuck her finger in a fan and the blades had like chopped her finger up real good. She was crying. I was crying right alongside her. Not because I was scared, but because my mom was hurting. I remember my brother, when he would get in trouble, he would get spanked by my parents and he would be in his room crying. I'd be in my room crying too, because my mom and dad were upset and my brother was upset. So empathy was such on that continuum. I was way over here, right? I was the person who cries in the movies. I carried everybody's emotions, and their emotions drove my behaviors. The other end of the spectrum is the daughter that I'm talking about that I adopted. And guys, this is way more common for adopted children to fall on this end of that continuum. Not always, but often it happens, okay? Sometimes your children cannot read emotions. This is an interesting one. I wasn't aware that this actually was a thing. I don't know. Have you ever heard that before? I know that my daughter, one of my daughters, this is not the same one as I was referencing earlier. One of my daughters, again, got her directly from NICU. So she went from a hospital to her home, been here ever since. It was in first grade when she started working with a certain behaviorist. And this behaviorist sent home flashcards. And on the flashcards, there'd be somebody like, you know, like this, and another person like, and she had to identify. I'd say, which one is angry? Literally, guys, it was a coin toss. You'd flip a coin either way. You had no idea what the kid was going to guess because she couldn't read body language. She didn't have the processing to fully understand it. Now, your child might get some of that body language stuff, and certainly the words coming out of your mouth are a good indicator as to whether you're happy or not. But don't take that for granted. A lot of kids are still chewing on, what does this mean? How should I perceive this? Mind you, my daughter was 8 years old at the time that she was having to learn how to read body language. So you can imagine her social interactions weren't appropriate, and her interactions with me regarding empathy were not appropriate. It wasn't because she lacked empathy. She didn't have context to draw from. Now, the case of my other child that I was mentioning previously, this one, she absolutely knew that I was upset. She did not have a disconnect in reading emotion and understanding body language. See, she simply didn't catch what I was putting out. It didn't affect her. It didn't manifest in the form of empathy the way that it normally would. And as I sat there on her bed, I wasn't mad anymore. This girl has been sneaking food since she was 2. She figured out how to scale the pantry shelves. Can you guys relate to that? So many of our kids that are drug and alcohol exposed in utero need sugar. They literally feel like they need it the same way as a drug addict needs their hit. And this girl saw me hide candy up on the top shelf, me thinking it was safe, and her in her itty bitty little PJs, she scaled to the top of the pantry, stuck some candy inside of her the elastic of her pants, and went to go upstairs to go to bed, and it crinkled. So she got busted, right? But that's how little she was when she started sneaking this candy. And of course lying, right? Do you have any candy? No. And it slides down her pants legs and she steps on it. You're like, 2 years old. And here she was already, I would say like 3rd grade, maybe around 3rd or 4th grade, right? And this girl, this beautiful, precious young lady had been sneaking candy for, at this point, 8 years. And she's still doing it. Guys, I wasn't angry anymore. I'm just concerned. I'm concerned for her. Her impulse control is so low. Her ability to regulate and make a good decision so low. What does it mean for my child and her future, right? So I'm not angry. I'm devastated, scared for her, not for me, not for the candy. And I'm sitting on her bed in tears, and I'm like, girl, I'm scared for you. Like, I am worried. We've had this conversation so many times. And I'm crying, and I look at her and I say, does it upset you that I'm so upset? And in her innocence, she shook her head no. She said no. And I was like, I can tell, right? But I didn't know what to do with that. What do you do with that when your child is not motivated by you whatsoever and doesn't feel broken when you yourself are broken? It is a big problem because you know what's to come. You know there will be dating. You know there will be marriage. You know that there will be child rearing. And so for the sake of your child, you want them to get it so badly, right? Okay, let's talk a little bit about that. Oftentimes, I want to be able to see with my glasses, but then the light. Oftentimes, children who lack empathy do stealing, sneaking, or manipulating behaviors, right? And here's the thing. I learned as I went, and guys, I made some horrible mistakes, and I really want to speak to those to you today so that you aren't making the same mistakes that I made. What happens when a child repeats the same behaviors over and over again but lacks empathy? You can't redirect them based off of empathy, based off of pleasing you. And the fundamental breakdown usually is in that cause and effect. They don't have the emotional intellect or the problem-solving intellect to be able to make a different choice. So us as parents, we're saying make a different choice, and they're going, it doesn't matter how hard I try, I make the same choice, so I'm gonna stop trying. And I've disappointed my mom so bad that at this point I'm going to stop caring. Did you hear that? I'm gonna stop trying and I'm gonna stop caring. That was my daughter. And I didn't know it until I had taken her at the point of just exasperation, taken her to a clinic and did some workup on her. And I had the Basque assessment. If you guys have ever done the Basque assessment, that's something I offer to my clients. It's very insightful because it helps you understand what your child sees in themselves and how they feel about themselves and how they perceive the world around them. And my daughter, because she wasn't special education, she hadn't had a Basque assessment like so many of my other children. So it was really insightful for me to see that she had literally decided she can't control the outcomes. She can't dictate how I feel because she's not going to be able to make a different choice. Therefore, I'm going to be upset, it literally destroyed her to the point where she had to disassociate from those feelings. This is how it was said in a clinical review that I read. Their emotions are so deep, full of shame and regret, that they disconnect from those feelings. So it's not that my daughter lacked empathy, it's that she lacked the ability to show empathy because she literally was in fight or flight and was choosing flight. And do you know how she got there? Me. I'm the thing that drove her to that place. Mamas, that doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel good. But here's the good news. I also was a big part of that solution for her. I knew she loved me, but I certainly didn't feel it. I didn't. This was a girl who visibly would disconnect from me from the time she was brought here as a baby. Visibly, she'd look through me instead of at me. We were having our eyes tested. They were thinking, is she autistic? Like, what's the deal with her eye contact, right? So I felt rejected from her, and the whole time she felt like it was too hard to please me, and therefore I have to disconnect from my mom's feelings. Holy guacamole. I never felt like I asked for too much. I didn't. The standards were so, in my mind, easy. But for her, it was never easy. She's a kid who had drug in utero exposure, alcohol in utero exposure, domestic violence exposure in utero, and then lost the only attachment she ever had with her biological mom and came to me, a stranger who smelled funny, who looked funny, who didn't know her, who she didn't know. She was grieving the loss of her biological mother while I was imparting myself into her world, right? It's not a simple thing. It isn't. So let's get back to the task of empathy at hand, right? Adopted children are not broken. I know I get on here all the time and we talk about problem solving. I don't want you to think for 2 seconds that adopted children are broken. They aren't. They come with a unique set of needs due to traumas that they've experienced. It means that they're actually the opposite of broken. The fact that they have behavioral issues and emotional issues mean that they're operating the way God designed their bodies to operate. Okay? Don't label your child. Don't label your child. I remember my child being told, you're stealing stuff. You can't grow up and be a thief. Oh, Mom, what was I doing? What was I doing? Shaming her, labeling her, guilting her. That is the opposite of what she needed, and that's what led her to the path of giving up. And she didn't just give up on me. She gave up on herself. She gave up in school. She gave up in so many ways that she was capable because of the ways in which she was finding herself unsuccessful in the relationship with me from an early age. Doesn't feel good to say it, but mamas, let's learn from it, right? Let's learn from it. We need to foster a growth mindset with our children. We need to teach them that their minds are malleable, that their behaviors can change with time, that if we continue to connect the dots over and over again, that they're going to be capable of making a different decision. So labels teach the opposite of that. Growth mindset, critically important. Got that? We got that, right? Okay. Grace for the repetition of frequent offenses, right? Guys, if you are one of those traditional parents that has first-time obedience, I am telling you, the rigidity of that with these children causes the issues to be worse. We have got to come at these kiddos with grace and say, okay, we made the wrong choice. What led us to that choice? What would have happened if we choose this, this happens. If we choose this, this happens, right? And then allow the natural consequences to take place. So I'll walk you through an example of that in a minute, but we've got to continually go to growth mindset. I love this one. We have to keep our children from feeling shame and defeat by tricking them or asking them things you already know the answer to and allowing them to continue with the cover and the lie. It only deepens their shame. So what does that look like? Let's say that I have gone to the store and gotten a whole big old box of donuts for a class party that's coming up at school. right? So I've gone to the store, I got a bunch of donuts in the middle of the night. My child sneaks out of bed, goes and eats 3/4 of the box of donuts. I wake up in the morning, my jaw's on the ground. How many of you have had this happen? Is it just me that has kids literally sneaking out of their bed to raid sweets? I know, and you'd think I didn't give them any, but I do. So yeah, it's not because it's just a rare commodity. All that being said, anyway, so you wake up and you see this and you have a choice now. You can ask your child, did you eat these donuts? In which case, do you think your child wants the consequences? Do you think your child's motivated by empathy? It's a no-win. That is a no-win question, mama. Right? You know they ate the donuts. So your child's going to say no, that they didn't. And then you're going to go into their room and go, what's this? That's chocolate icing on your pillowcase. How'd that get there? I don't know. Do you see the digression and the way that the shame builds? So instead, we need to approach that and say, hey, listen, 3/4 of the donuts for your party today are missing. I know that you have a need for those donuts, but that's not the best decision because look, if you eat the donuts at night, then we aren't fulfilling our obligation for the class. So you can either eat them at night and then not be responsible for your class party and be unable to bring things, or we can make a different choice and leave the donuts because now we're going to have to make it right. So that's one of my favorites. You'll hear this over and over again in my videos. I like to tell my kids, we need to make it right. Okay, so making it right is different than a consequence. It's you have a problem and you need to solve it. So at that point, it would be, what can we do to get out of the house 20 minutes early? What are you going to be able to do? Because we have to go by the store in order to meet our obligation. Secondly, we have to buy some more donuts, and I already spent my money on the donuts. So I think this week we're gonna have to use some of our allowance in order to be able to get these donuts. So the natural consequences are we don't get to be beautiful for school. We're just gonna have to throw ourselves together, and you're gonna have to give up some money, right? Or do extra chores to earn the money that I needed to do in order to be able to replace these donuts. So your child is now empowered to make a solution rather than shamed for a poor decision. And in doing that, we show our children the problem-solving skills and we take our emotional baggage out of it. We take our frustration out of it. And now our children don't feel like they have to give up on themselves or like you've given up on them, right? So hopefully that helps. We want to teach our children empathy by modeling empathy and being extremely patient as they develop it. So I told you I had a child that couldn't read body language, and that's the reason that she wasn't able to project empathy. Happy to announce, beautiful teenager and totally so empathetic and so brilliant in so many ways, right? She's been able to adjust and find those skill sets as she matured. She just didn't pick them up as early as other people. The other child that I have that has a struggle with empathy, I will tell you on that continuum, I don't think we're ever going to be here. But instead of being here, we're here. And do you know what made that fundamental leap for her? Acknowledging it. It made all the difference in the world. When we got back her BASC assessment and I sat her down and I said, I think you quit. You quit trying at school. You quit trying at home. I think you feel like your best efforts never changed anything. How am I doing? She said, yeah. I said, so if you study really, really hard for a test or you don't study at all, the grade isn't that different. So why would you study, right? Yep. I said, and if you try your hardest but still can't remember to shut off the light, still can't remember to pick up your shoes, still can't hold those impulse controls of getting into the fridge and taking something sweet that you're not supposed to have, right? You feel like you can't control it. So you feel like a failure. And if you're going to fail, what's the point of even trying? Yep. So we've had to make some shifts. What things in the house can we take away so that she doesn't fail, so that her only option is success, right? And we do that. We literally have stopped putting things in the house that are a huge temptation for her. And then periodically we'll say, hey, we're going to give this a try and see whether or not that's where you're at. Maybe when you're 15, maybe when you're 14, right? And then we introduce them back. And if she's successful, we keep them. And if she isn't successful, then we say, oh, that's okay. It's okay. We'll try again. We will try again at another point in time. For now, it's just not worth it. It's just not worth it. No big deal. And she's really developed some self-esteem. This girl went from a CD student to an AB student because she has discovered a sense of accomplishment because we have empowered her to do so. When before, honestly, truly, it's on me. It's on me, mamas. The reason that she gave up goes all the way back to her being 2 years old and the patterns that I set of shaming her when I should have been encouraging her and extending grace. So hopefully we can all learn from this, right? All right, that's what I have for you today. I will have a link down below if you are interested in talking about the dynamics of your child that's struggling with empathy, struggling with impulse control, if you're struggling with shame, if you are struggling with manipulation from your child. All of those are things that I work with my mamas in my coaching, and I would love to spend 45 minutes just talking with you and seeing whether or not we could put a plan in place to help you fast track your child to the successes that mine are having, right? I literally walked through years of not knowing better until I did. And I'd love to save you and your child from that journey of hardship with the knowledge that I've learned since then through my certifications and through my life coaching. So thank you so much for your time. Take care, everybody.